Hey, sixth grade. This is kind of a review lesson over what we've gone over, but better audio and hopefully better video. And so, for those of you who need this, we're going to see how to use just a basic way of finding 20% of 40 or a percent of something. I'm going to do a normal whole number and then I'll do a decimal number just to help you out. And so, the first step is I want to turn this percent into a decimal. Oh, this marker doesn't work. That one is dead. Let's see if this one's dead. Yep, that one's dead too. Prepared, yay. Alright, this one should be good. I want to turn the percent into a decimal. Okay. And since that's my first step, my percent is 20%, right? So how do I turn 20% into a decimal? Well, our method that we went over a couple weeks ago was to get rid of the percent symbol and to move this decimal 2 places to the right, to the left, I'm so sorry. So the decimal would sit there, and our new decimal value would be 0.20. I put the 0 there. Does that change the number's value? No, it does not in this case. Just keep in mind this, the math behind this that's happening is I'm actually taking 20% and I'm dividing it by 100. Getting rid of the percent again. I can even simplify it to 2/10, and if I read that 2/10, well, where does that 2 fall? It falls into the 10th position, which would be 0.2. That's just another way to turn it into a decimal. Pretty quick way. Now, since we have our decimal here, I want to make sure you know that of in math typically means to multiply. And so we're just going to move that down here. We're going to say, okay, 20% of 40, or 2/10 of 40 is equal to what we're looking for. We're looking to find out what is 20% of 40. And so in doing this, the hardest part for most of us is actually doing the multiplication. And that's okay. We're all growing. Now, most people say you don't have to line up the decimals when you multiply. My motto is do it anyways. And you do it anyways because no matter what, you'll keep on the straight and narrow path when it comes to messing with decimals. When you add and subtract decimals, you have to line up the decimal points. Every time, you have to. If you don't, you get the answer wrong. In multiplication, you don't have to. But if you do, it doesn't matter, you still get it right. Line them up, don't line them up in multiplication, you still get it right. So at all times, just to keep you safe in the future, just always line up your decimals if you're multiplying, adding, or subtracting. Okay. Now, to multiply this, you notice I put the decimals right above each other, which when I do that, it lines up all the place values at the same time too. And so 0 times 0, we're going to get zeros all the way across because we know that 0 times anything will give us 0. Then we do 2 times 0, and we get 0. 2 times 0 again, we get 0. 2 times 0, we get 0. And then 2 times 4 is 8. Well, now you can see it. Sorry there. Don't forget to, the reason I moved this when I started and I said 2 times 0 is 0 and it went here and not here is because this 2 is in the 10th position. So whenever I start to multiply this towards each number, because that's what I'm doing when I multiply, you have to make sure you record your result in the same starting position or place value. Now, some people call this dropping the egg or the invisible 0, ghost 0, whatever you want to call it. but you can fill this in if it helps you feel better. It makes it make more sense. Alright, so going back to finishing this, now we have everything we need. We don't need to use that last 0. And technically, we didn't even need to use the first one, but we did just to keep you on the proper pattern of doing this. And so 0 plus 0 is 0, then 0, then 0, then 0, then 8. If you notice when we multiply, multiplication is repeated addition. So that's why we use addition down below to add these 2 lines of numbers up. Now, a lot of times on the test, they will have gotten you. Don't let them get you. If you were to say this is the answer, you'd be wrong. Because if you look back at the original problem, what does it say? It says, what is 20% of 40? Well, we know 100% of 40 is 40. And so if we have a number and we think we're done, is 80,000 less than 40? No, it is not. So that's not the correct answer. We need to account for these place values up here. Now we need to make sure we pay attention to 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 digits that are behind the decimal. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I can stick my decimal right in there. And what do I get? My answer overall is 8. 8.0000 is 8. And so now what did we originally find? 20% of 40 is 8. That makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Okay. That's how you do the standard format, or just the easiest way of finding the percent of something.